everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Roof Talk. We are in our series right now of 10 episodes to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of Elite Roofing. And each week we're talking about things that you can do to improve your business. But this week, we have the star of the show herself, Sarah Weiss, the CEO and president of Elite Roofing, that's with us to talk a little bit about Elite. And then I think on top of that, we want to talk about, passing down business to the next generation. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you, Derek. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you. And we've known each other for a number of years, and I love working with the company. But maybe you can tell a little bit, just a background about 10 years this has been going on. How did Elite Roofing get started? What do you feel like the niche is? Some of those kind of background things that I think might be able to help the listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Like many entrepreneurs, ultimately, we were started because my father and our other founding partners, including Greg Russell, really just didn't feel like they fit in within corporate America. They're entrepreneurs at heart, really salespeople at heart. And we decided to bet on ourselves, like a lot of our customers who go into business. And so we started the company in 2013, really with just the dream of opening a few locations and being like the Cheers bar, like from the TV show, where people, we know your name, you feel welcome, you're part of our, we're part of your everyday lives as a distributor, and the roofers come in and there's that personal touch that at times can be hard to continue to maintain as a company, reaches, a certain size. And so that was really the heart of the company, why we started it, that as entrepreneurs, we didn't really fit into corporate America. And as we saw an opportunity in our industry where there was a lot of consolidation, and we felt like there was a niche to have an independent distributor like ourselves.
Yeah, and I think that's the greatest part about Elite is that it is really local in that regard. Although, yes, there's an HQ now, you do have local ownership. There's people in the market that really care about the business. And, as a consultant, having traveled to a number of your locations, I think that's the thing that separates you. And that really it's the competitive advantage is this ability to walk in there. And I love it. I never had heard the Cheers analogy before. But that really is dead on because it does feel that way. And we were just talking before this about, food trucks that love to park in our parking lot because they get a chance to sort of hang out and be part of that community. Well, let's chat a little bit about the roofing business in general, because obviously right now we're going through a little bit of who knows what it is. Is it a recession? Is it a temporary thing? What are your sort of thoughts on the future of the roofing industry? I mean, the good thing is everybody's got a roof, so it's not like we're going anywhere. But certainly it's becoming more and more challenging out there.
It is. I view 2023 as really a reset year, a market reset. I don't look at it as, recessionary in the roofing space. We've had such a crazy last couple of years that I think things are just settling back to a new normal for a little while. Yeah. And, I think it's still really broad. It's very robust. I think that, being as much as you can diversify, the better as far as being in commercial and residential. I think that we see more and more roofers looking at that, having multiple angles, multiple areas within the industry that they're playing in, because when one area is up, one's often down, et cetera. So if there's not a hailstorm, if you're, doing commercial in a growing market, that's an opportunity. I think in this space, we're continuing to see private equity getting more involved with the contracting community. We're seeing more conglomerates coming up, more acquisitions being made. I think we're also seeing technology getting a lot more involved in our businesses, which is allowing some roofing companies to be more of a marketing machine, really, where they're subbing out the work to crews. A lot of really cool innovation is happening in our space right now. And I think there's never been a better time to be in the roofing industry. And I think it's, although being an entrepreneur is never for the faint of heart, I think there's a lot of opportunity for people who are growth minded right now and want to go and make a name for themselves in a market. And I've seen a lot of companies come up over the last 5 or 7 years, and they're changing the way we do business. And it's fun to be a part of.
Yeah, I think you're right, too. Even having worked in the construction industry back in the last downturn, right, the 2008, where it really was bad, what we tended to see was that the really good operators rose to the top. They focused on bottom line, less on top line. They consolidated the businesses, and many times they merged. We tended, at that time, I was in a technology company in the industry, and we would tend to see the two biggest competitors in a marketplace, let's say it was roofers, all of a sudden, their names merged together, and it was like a little marriage where they got together and they said, hey, look, we're better at doing this together because our back office costs we can share and consolidate and bring those things together. And we become, experts together, and we can get more and more market share out of the industry. And I think that's something that we're yet to see. But I certainly know from working with customers of Elite that we do tend to have a lot more of those smaller contractors that are coming to us that are looking for good advice. We spend a lot of time doing demo days and those kind of things because they're looking for that type of experience. They're looking for knowledge. They're looking to expand the product offerings that they can get into so that they can expand their opportunity.
No, I agree. And I think also so many people have brought new crews into the industry the last few years. They use those demo days a lot of times to train up their up and coming crews and to really, give them that hands-on product knowledge, because it's definitely, with the rate at which people are onboarding new hires all the time, that training component is very difficult. It's a challenge, and we try to play our part in helping remove that challenge as much as possible. But there's a lot of different segments of the roofing industry that we're serving, and definitely the smaller contractors, they can be more nimble. They have less overhead. There's definitely advantages of every size. Then you have the conglomerates that are starting to happen, whether through mergers or acquisitions or just organic growth, and that's fun to see as well. But they're dealing with different challenges. Different challenges when the original owner is no longer sitting at the office in a new market. And you really need to figure out how to incentivize the local leadership to act and behave like the original owner would. And we're trying to do our best to kind of share our own experiences and stories as we've scaled the company, because we've been through those headaches, learning new states' lien laws and tax situations and HR laws, and all of that is a different challenge for the larger companies who are going multi-state right now. There's a lot of interesting things going on in this space at the moment.
That is true. When your fleet of trucks goes from one state to how many states is Elite in now? 10? Right?
9 or 10 states, depending on the day. It's all over.
Yeah, and that does. It adds a whole different level of complexity to the business that you really, you can't prepare yourself for until you have to deal with it. And I would say, and of course, talking specifically about Elite and the purpose of this podcast, it's been really interesting because the mandate that I was given is let's go out and let's find tools to help our contractors. It's been exciting for me to learn about all these different tools, as well as learn about things like accounting and how construction accounting can be very, very different than other things. There's a lot of AI tools out there right now that can automate your accounting unless you're in construction. And a lot of them even say that. If you're in construction, that's a totally different animal. We really can't help you. So I've really enjoyed that journey of learning about things that we can do to help our customers too, and pointing them in those directions. So that's been very cool.
I've loved hearing about the topics and the people you're interviewing, because so many of the best ideas come from people who have been in the field doing something. Yes. And they see something that they're like, this has to be better. There has to be a better way to do this. There has to be a less dangerous way. There has to be a more efficient way or whatever. So for you to be interviewing all these entrepreneurs as well, who really started out, boots on the ground, that's fantastic. And I love to see it.
Yeah, and it is, you're 100% right. I think every single one that I've interviewed has been a or still owns a construction company. And they're just like, well, this is even Ashley Engel from Profit Matters, that owns a bookkeeping and accounting company. She still owns a concrete company too, right? And it's like, she's like, I just was shocked when I saw that when my subs were sending me handwritten invoices. And I was like, guys, how are you keeping track of this? So she's like, I ended up doing it on the side. I'm like showing them how to do QuickBooks in the field. And eventually I'm like, let me just create a business that solves this problem. So that is really cool how that happens. And I do think innovation tends to happen, particularly entrepreneurs like who our customers many times are, they might only have one or two trucks, but they're seeing things that are happening. They know what the pain points are. And when given the opportunity to solve them, they tend to create really great businesses that fill the niche for everybody else out there too.
Yeah, and I'm seeing that more and more where our customers have a lot of side gigs as well, meaning like whether it's an accounting firm or like they have they're very good with dealing with insurance work. And so then they help the other contractors in the community by submitting for them, by walking them through the process, by, offering that as a service. Or I see what's kind of interesting to see is these marketing companies who happen to do roofing are really up and coming. And, they really embraced social media early on. They figured out how to target the homeowner. I mean, I think the companies that are struggling are the ones who have really relied on the yellow pages, which was not long ago, 15 years ago, when that's how when I moved to Phoenix, I got the yellow pages and that's how I'd find services, right? And that's just no more. And so we're all being challenged to really innovate and change our way of thinking. And it's very cool to see all the entrepreneurialism and the different businesses people are dabbling in addition to roofing.
Yeah. I think the other thing I'd love to chat with you about, I had a really great interview with Susan from EOS for this show and talking about culture and how do you build a culture. And it is one of the things I have to tell you, and I'm not just telling you this because we're on a podcast, Elite has a very unique culture and it is very different from many of the other cultures that I've experienced, particularly in the construction industry. And I think it really goes to show the success of that when you look at how long people tend to work, at Elite and the level of their satisfaction with the company. Tell me about that. Was that intentional or did you fall into? Many times culture is something you fall into, you realize after the fact, you're like, hey, look what we've become. Or was it more intentional? I mean, were you thinking about this early on in the formation of the organization and how that you wanted to treat people and be treated?
So we were thinking about how we wanted to treat people and how to be treated. I would not say that we were thinking about culture initially. It was like drinking out of a fire hose when you started a company. But, part of why we started the company is we wanted to create a company where people belonged. I think all too often, like in prior life for my father, when you get into big corporate America, if you don't check all the boxes, if you're not, if you don't have a college degree, if you don't look a certain way, if you don't have a certain pedigree, if you didn't come from a certain company, you quickly start feeling like you don't belong. And that belonging is something that I think, everybody seeks out. And we wanted to create a place where our customers, our vendors, and our employees felt like they belonged, they were important. And so that was always at our core. And now how it's materialized over time, part of that's been luck and part's been intention. We recruited, our initial partners are just genuinely good human beings that care about people. And that kind of started the people who have not worked out here haven't fit in with that vibe. It's been a little more me. And that's not our culture. It's very much let's help each other out, like karma kind of in that way. And, pay it forward. And, we're, as entrepreneurs, you carry a lot of weight stewarding, when you bring people into the organization, it's a lot of responsibility to make sure you're providing a culture and a workplace that they want to be at. So now we are very intentional, but I'd say those first 4 years, we wouldn't always be able to put a word to it why somebody wasn't working out here. But when you look back, it was pretty clear they didn't fit in with the vibe of how we operate. They didn't fit in with the teamwork or the way that we wanted to play the game. And I think as entrepreneurs, you put in so many hours, it got to the point where we all kind of know like who we want to work with today and the kind of people that we want to be on the team, because we want to be proud of the people we're on the team with.
I think it's such a good point, and I would agree. I think it's impossible to create culture intentionally from day one, but there comes some point where you start to realize, hey, we've built something here that's not just the business. We've built something that's a little bit more, and that people are being attracted to us because we've built this other thing too that is sort of intangible. And then you do start to take some direction on it. And it's been interesting for me, my experience with you all using EOS, which is the, entrepreneur's operating system, which is, a good set of meeting rules and different things that you apply to the business to help provide you that rigor. But on top of that, you also use tools like Culture Index that actually look at the personality profile of somebody and makes the decision of, is this person going to be satisfied here? I think, Kim, who you work with on that is always interesting to me when she talks about energy units. Like, we don't want people, if a person naturally has 43 energy units and we put them in a job that requires 60 energy units, they're going to hate us. They're going to hate us. So why not find a better position for them that more closely aligns with the way that they see the world and the type of work they want to do? We've all done this. I mean, I'm not by nature a detail-oriented person. I create systems to be very detail-oriented, but I'm not by nature that. So I have to create my own little crutch. But I also know it takes more energy for me to sit down and work on that spreadsheet, because it's not the gregarious Derek that, so I can do it, and I can do it really, really well, but it requires me to be, I got to get a good night's sleep first. I got to be ready to do those kind of things. So finding the right people, putting them in the right seats, making sure that people are a good cultural fit. I think you can just feel it when you walk into an elite location.
No, it's important. And honestly, when we found EOS, I was lucky. I was part of a peer group, and I was hearing somebody else was using it. And I thought, we're this company of entrepreneurs, which is amazing, until you try to manage a company of all entrepreneurs.
What do they call it? Herding cats. Herding cats, right? Yeah.
It is like herding cats. But you know what? Like, when you take the emotion out of it, and that's what EOS does, it creates accountability. EOS created accountability at our executive leadership team for us to get aligned with what are we trying to do, where are we trying to go, and what are we going to get done in the next 90 days. And don't let the squirrel, distract you. Yeah. And so that's what that brought to us, probably 6 years ago. And there's no way we'd be to where we are today with the culture and the success we've had if we hadn't implemented EOS. We have hit the ceiling so many times where it's like you go through growing pains as entrepreneurs. And we, every time EOS has had some tools that we could utilize to kind of help us push through, figure out the next way. And sometimes that is you have to get people off the bus that are the wrong people on the bus. Sometimes that is we're taking on too many priorities. We got to narrow it down. There's lots of different conversations that has evoked, but we now have 3 regions running on it as well. And it's just been phenomenal. But when we added culture index in, that really added a whole other layer, because to your point, right people, right seats. You want people to be enjoying what they're doing. You want them to have that sense of belonging. And who doesn't want their leader to know who they are? I mean, our leaders use that every day to know who is on their team and what matters to them. How do they want to be praised? How do they want to be rewarded? Like, when are they stressed out and why? Like, what's the root of that? And it's really been able to help us predict turnover. It's been able to help us change the way we coach people. Yeah. And it really, I always liken it to the movie Moneyball with Brad Pitt. I mean, it's helped us choose the right people to get on the bus in the first place. So that has definitely been influential in helping us build our culture.
I think it's part of the reason I've liked working with you as well is I've always been a big proponent that the only way to make change is to start with values and beliefs. If I just try to demand that you change your actions and behaviors, it's not going to be a good time, because it's always going to be contentious. But if I can change the way that you believe and the way that you value things, then that's going to influence the way that you understand the world. It's going to affect your thinking and language. It's going to become your attitudes and behavior. And in the end, it's going to result in the outcomes that you like. And even with our work together, I said, I can do so many things virtually. And you're like, sometimes you tell me you got to go give them a little Derek, right? You got to go sell them on that values and beliefs and let them understand how passionate we are about things like making sure that things are designed really efficiently and that our customers have the best possible experience when they walk in the door. And even with so much stuff that we've done this last year with striping lots, let's put stripe instead of just letting our customers wander around and wonder where they need to go. Let's get out there with paint and let's paint some lines and say, here's where you need to be to get loaded as fast as possible. And I think people really appreciate that. They really appreciate the fact that we do value that aspect and try to think about it throughout the whole entire equation.
Look, it's a small thing, but like striping a line lets people clearly know where they belong.
You're right.
Come to a yard and feel ambiguous. Like, where am I supposed to be? What's the plan here? What's the routine? Like, even people like, as rogue entrepreneurs, we actually want to feel confident that we know what the boundaries are and like what we should be doing.
I think you roped me into that one because we talked about that sense of belonging in the beginning, and you got me because you're right. Those lines are important, right? It makes you feel like I know I'm in the right spot. It says will call on the ground, and there's an arrow, and there's 10 spaces there, and I pull in one of those spaces, and I feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be. I'm going to
There's
get what I need.
There's a lot of psychology to that. And, and you were talking about being on the road, going and seeing the branches and stuff, even with the advent of Zoom and so forth, that personal connection, I say to everybody who starts here, like on the leadership team, I'm like, nobody cares what you know until they know that you care.
Yeah.
So you could be a genius, but and I could hire you and you could have all these great ideas. But if you're just going and telling everyone how smart you are, no one here is going to care. We have to first know that you genuinely care about us as people, our teammates, et cetera.
Yeah.
And then ears are all open. And I think that's been something that I've definitely learned over the last 10 years. I think when at times, especially if you've been an individual performer, you come in and you want to demonstrate to everybody, hey, I've got this. And as a leader, sometimes you feel that pressure, you should tell everyone what you know so that they believe in you or whatever. But you learn quickly that is not at all what you need to do. You need to show everyone how much you really care. And nobody, anyway, there's a lot to that, but
that is a really great point. Well, listen, I think it's a good point to transition to. Let's talk a little bit about passing the business down, because this was your dad was a founder here. And now now dad's moved on and is doing his thing. And here you are, in the driver's seat. How'd that work? Because that can be tough sometimes. I mean, he's not standing over in the corner there listening to everything we're saying, is he?
I was going to say, is this going to be a side-by-side, like Oprah, he said or something, or Jerry Springer here?
Right, exactly. Yeah. Bring him on, folks. Let's get him. Yeah.
Anybody who has gone through that knows that it's hard. It's hard for everybody involved. It takes a lot of grace and patience, and I give my dad full kudos for that. It is, it's messy. It's at the end of the day, my dad, we would not have started this company if it wasn't for my dad's vision, for his willingness to bet the farm, to bet on himself and our team. And pretty much, from day one, we didn't have clarity as to if I would want to do this or not. I think it probably in the back of his head, it was always there, but I wasn't sure. I wanted to see how this went. And, he was pretty hard on me from the beginning. He would tell you, he didn't give me any, I didn't get anything for being his daughter except for more work and less appreciation. And, when you're going through that, it's hard. Sometimes I think where people fail in these transitions, mom or dad tries to protect the kid the whole time and make them think everything is rainbows and unicorns. My dad may have taken more feed her to the lions approach, but for that, I am grateful.
Sure.
Because honestly, you only learn through all the bites and bruises and falling down and having to pick yourself back up. He never publicly endorsed me in a position as far as giving me a title. It was very much you have to figure this out. And every task I was given, I had priorly not done before, but neither had my partners. Forming a headquarters, hiring a controller, hiring credit managers, managing the back end. But so my journey, I can only speak for my journey, was really him forcing me to make not just a name for myself. I think that's overused. I had to get street cred by going through all the challenges that brought. And then we would hit a wall as far as okay, what do we do now? And so we worked with our ERS coach quite a bit. And we got very lucky. I think our CPA or somebody introduced us to somebody who works on business succession planning.
Oh.
And that was about year 4 of the company. And there's a gentleman named Bill Roberts, who I'll forever credit. He's passed now, but he helped Dad and I. He had a lot of come to Jesus talks with us about thinking through succession, really challenging us both to be more open to maybe how the other one was thinking about something. Bill made us think about, okay, if something happened to either one of us tomorrow, what would be the immediate steps, kind of making us start to remove the family and the emotion from it, the family tie emotion from it, and more at the end of the day, you guys are running this company, how are you going to do it? And so he was very influential. He really pushed us and challenged us. And then our EOS coach helped us tremendously. And at the end of the day, when my dad was ready to become chairman, we ultimately, he could not do that till he came to the point in his mind where he understood I was going to run the company probably completely different than he would. Yeah. But yeah, he trusted me.
Yeah.
And that's a journey.
That's
It's not a
hard.
pretty journey on either part. Like, I mean, I'll tell you that he would tell you if he was sitting here, there were tears, there were times I wanted to quit. It takes a lot of fortitude, especially if your father or mother has been very successful. You're in their shadow to some degree, and that plays with you too. And I feel like in some ways me taking over right before COVID was a big blessing because nobody in the world knew how to navigate COVID. And so I had a newly formed leadership team, and it was like suddenly you're the resident expert in navigating COVID as in this business, and it's been an interesting journey. But I definitely would tell those people out there who are working through it, it's not pretty. It's not pretty for any. I've never talked to somebody who goes through this and says, "Oh, it was so easy." If it's it's hard, but it's worth it, and it takes a lot of grace on both parts and humility. And acceptance that both parties are going to do it differently than maybe either would want it to be, but it's worth it.
It's very sage advice, and it's advice that only could come from somebody who actually ran the gauntlet, and went through this as you did, because I do think this is something that we as entrepreneurs don't think about very often. And that is what happens whenever we're done. Right. And what happens when we're gone? I've done some consulting for companies where the CEO has passed and I've had to step in as an interim role. And those are really tough because there's been no succession planning done. But it's something that I don't care how old you are, you should start thinking about in your business. And listen, that even if you've got 2 trucks, be thinking about what would be the exit plan. As you know, my brother passed away unexpectedly 9 months ago and owns a business. And here we are 9 months later. I don't feel like we're any closer to getting things resolved just because nobody ever thought it was going to happen. So it is important to think about that. I don't care what that is. If you've got employees, you really have to start thinking about what's going to happen here just in case something occurs. And it could just even be you don't want to do it anymore, or you get another opportunity and you've got to figure out how to pass that business on. I think that was some really sage advice, Sarah. So thank you for that. Listen, in closing here, what tell me about the future? I mean, obviously Elite has grown. I don't know if anybody would have believed how fast it's grown in 10 years. I mean, another 10 years of the same thing. Is that where you're thinking we're going?
You know what? We're continuing to grow. I mean, honestly, Derek, one of the reasons, look, we're at 28 branches today, but companies in our space have grown faster than that. But when you talk about that culture piece, like for us, we're all about growing at the pace of which we can maintain that culture. So that's why you have never seen us do an acquisition. I'm not saying we never would. It's never been a priority. It's never been a focus. For us, it's always been grow via greenfield locations. Start from scratch with a team that you intentionally manicure to be aligned with our values and how we're operating. So I always say when people are like, where are you guys going next? What's the plan? It's where the right person appears, where they reach out to me on LinkedIn or wherever, and they say, hey, you know what, Sarah, like I'd really like to build a business with you in XYZ city. I think I'm aligned with the lead. I like how you guys operate. That's really where the story always begins.
I think that's a great way to close this episode, because it is really true. And I like the intentionality of that, of grow with where the people are. Like, don't worry about it. It'll happen when the right people come into focus and you know that you've got the right partners in this. But thank you for joining me today, Sarah. This has been really informative and educational. And I think this episode's a little different than many of the other ones because it thinks a little bigger picture. It's not something you can put into motion today of start tracking time for your people or start tracking your expenses better. This is more thinking about the big picture of the business that you own today and imagining where it's going, intentionally growing that business, both the culture, the people, the systems, and then how does the business exist beyond your vision and move on to somebody else and get passed down. Either maybe it's to a family member, or maybe it's, to somebody that you're selling it to, or maybe you're selling it to your employees. But I think there's been some great sage advice in this. And I thank you for that, Sarah. Thank you for joining me. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Derek. It was great talking with you today.
As always. All right. And thank you for tuning into another edition of Roof Talk. Please make sure you like and subscribe. And if you've got ideas or suggestions for other episodes, things that you'd like to hear about, let us know. We'd be happy to try to provide you with that information. Okay. Until next time.